Good afternoon. Today is the 18th of June and it's time to answer your viewer questions. I've had an awful lot of viewer questions this time, considering we only put the video up a couple of days ago, so I'm very grateful for that. Obviously a lot of you will have seen the episode of Cars on Television that went live at about 1:45 this morning because it was so big it took 4 hours to upload, about Minder. Very appreciative of that. If you are wanting to support the channel really and watching videos like that, though, the best way to do that is to watch all the way through. I know it's a real pain, and perhaps if you don't want to watch all of it, you can just leave the browser tab open and put it on mute or something. But the average view time on that video is about 2.5 minutes, which is, considering it's a 45-minute video or thereabouts, maybe a little bit less, that concerns me slightly, but never mind. I'm very grateful to you anyway for all of you who watched it, and we can answer some questions from the other day as well. I'm very, very grateful to so many of you who have asked. Oh, my phone has fallen over again. I just put it there. Who've asked after my mother and her car keys. She did find her car keys about half an hour after I recorded the video, and also the tyre on the Seat that I'm in today, that has been repaired, which is wonderful. I thought I had needed a new one, but actually it just needed a repair, which is fantastic, and they didn't even charge me. So got 4 original tyres on this car. The car's done 28,500 miles, and they're on between 5 and 6 millimeters. So that's either my careful driving or that is Bridgestone tyres being very good. I will leave it up to you as to decide which it is. So the first question comes from Ilyas Lamari. If I get anybody's name wrong, then I'm really, really sorry. If you've got a French and German name, then I should be okay, but any other nationality I'm not so good on. Anyway, Ilyas says, "Sir, very delicate of you that you are holding a question answer session again." Well, that's no problem, sir. This is my question. We all know that the Super Minis from the 50s, 60s and onwards are very iconic and astonishing cars. I'm talking about cars like the Beetle, Mini, 2CV, Fiat 500 and Renault 4. Of all these cars, there's got to be one car that's the king of them all in terms of comfort, reliability, charm, handling and fun factor. Which of these would you choose as your daily driver, king of them all, and what type of spec? I'm leaning towards a 90s single-point fuel injection Rover Mini with sunroof like a British Open, or the 1990 Special Edition Renault 4 Clan with the GTL engine. First of all, I have to say that Super Minis didn't actually exist until probably the Auto Bianchi A112, which was 1969, I think it was, that came out. There were cars that were specifically bigger than the Austin Mini. A lot of people say the first one was the Renault 5, and then we had things like the Metro, Ford Fiesta, of course. So they didn't call them Super Minis in the 60s. That word didn't really exist. It was more, they were just called small cars. Like the Morris Minor was called a small car. I think the original Cortina was called a small car as well. So the ones we're really looking at are the kind of iconic cars of each one of their countries, and the Renault 4 is a very iconic car. Beetle, Mini, 2CV, Fiat 500. Having recently been in a Beetle, I don't think it's probably the one that I would go for. I have been in an original Mini. It was actually in Cape Town, of all places, was the one I spent the most time in, and that is a masterpiece of packaging. Absolute masterpiece. I think if it were me, yes, I would go probably with a Mini. I would probably go with a 90s one because of the fuel injection and fiddling around with carbon stuff. I would go for either a Sprite or a Cooper. I would go for a very late car, post 1995, with a driver's airbag. There you go. That's the first question. So Jake from Wells Wheels asks, my question for your question and answer session is, how did you get into doing your videos for YouTube? Well, I actually have an entire video on my channel already about this. It's called How Did the Lloyd Vehicle Consulting YouTube channel start? I'll have to summarise this very briefly because I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I have been wanting to do a YouTube channel for a while. When I got started as an independent vehicle consultant in 2017, I thought, after doing the website and the Facebook page and things like that, which are sort of major things that you really need to have any kind of business these days, I would like to do some videos. And Mr. Franks, who a lot of you will be familiar with, who has filmed an awful lot of my reviews, along with Marriage and Furious Driving, and actually has edited the majority of the reviews. He is a friend of mine. I met him through the leadership of a Christian organisation that we were both part of at the time in early 2018, and he definitely had the skills that I needed to do reviews. And the first car that we did was this one, and then we did my lady wife's MG3, and it went from there. The channel was originally just going to be reviews, but what actually happened is that we got a bit low on money to do those reviews, so we did other videos as well. My lady wife actually prompted me with that, and it was yes, that was how it started. In terms of the way that things actually work, well, I very much was keen to do a character for True Jacket Reviews. If you've watched a lot of these critics on YouTube, particularly film critics, although film criticism was actually quite difficult on YouTube for a number of years because a lot of the rights holders blocked their videos being used, and I've had the same problem myself when I've done cars and television and film. A lot of the actual footage is blocked, so they often set up other sites. The angry video game nerd chap called James Rolfe, who is one of the longest standing kind of sort of independent critics on the internet. He does, nostalgic video games and things like that. He was for a long time hosted on a site called screwattack.com, and obviously the angry video game nerd is a persona that he has. With that guy over glasses.com, which some of you will know about, some of you won't, was a video game and film reviewing site. It was a home for people to be able to have like a sort of persona and a character and review video games and films from their kind of bedroom or whatever they had. This was back in about 2007, 2008 it started, and the quality of equipment that people had was quite poor in comparison with now. So a lot of these older reviews look really, really bad in sort of 240p and things like that. But very much these people who were around was a sort of back influence on me when I thought, well, we have to have a sort of way into this. We have to make it funny. We have to make it sort of not quite conventional. We have to have an item of clothing to where we have to call it a certain thing. We have to have just this idea that we don't quite know what this person's up to. We don't really know, and so he has a sort of kind of conversation with an unseen figure. It could be to do with something, but it could be to do something else. We don't really know. And we have sort of character traits he has. He doesn't like diesels. The favourite television programme, must be the 60s or 70s. They're all traits very much that an exaggeration of what I've been talking about for years, and so it was easy to do that. And from that, we did other videos like the first one on the London ultra low emission zone. It was something very close to my heart in October 2018. That was about 6 months before it actually came in, so I did know a bit about that at the time. And it kind of went from there. I don't know, it grew a lot more slowly than I thought it would, and it's still in some ways growing a lot more slowly than I thought it might, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think that's really it. I could probably talk a lot longer about it, but we'll pause it here because I think that's the essential information you need. Next question from the Driveway Kid Canic TDK. Hello, Joseph. Hello, sir. Nice question answer session again. My question for you is, if you had to buy a car for someone and it had to meet with these criteria, what would it be? Well, if I'm doing a paid job for a client, I have to be quite sort of open-minded as to actually what we pick up, because sometimes if you're on the lookout for a car, you can go and see the car and it could be terrible. I've had that happen a few times, and you have to have things in reserve, or perhaps the drive position of a particular car that a client really wants is really bad, and they don't really want to drive it. I've had that happen on more than one occasion. They'd be disappointed with the actual car. Even it's a good example of one. So this is a very hypothetical question. It's different from the sort of thing that I would do, the process that I would follow if I was, doing a paid job for somebody. But theoretically, let's just say that I'm being asked for advice in this way. In a theoretical example, the criteria that the Driveway Kid Canic TDK says that the car needs to be from 1995 or older. It needs to have vintage or retro styling. It needs to be 900 kilograms or lighter. It needs to be a manual. It needs to be petrol. No LPG. It's okay if the MOT is expired. The buyer will be willing to fix it up if needed, body-wise, suspension, brakes, service, and so on. It's a weekend car that can be used daily if necessary for a short period. The budget is £1,500. I'm very curious to hear the opinion from an independent vehicle consultant like you. Well, that is me. I hate to be a bit cliched about this, but the best person really to speak about this would be Mr. Ed Westby from Twin Cam, because he has a 1991 Rover Metro 1.1C, and that car actually appeared in the first Hub Nut Social video that I did, which was in March 2019. And if you go on a Twin Cam channel, I'm sure you'll see lots and lots of those. Ed, if you're watching, I'm sure that you would appreciate some extra for people coming to your channel and watching your videos. I'm going to go with a Rover Metro. All Rover Metros are 900 kilogram or lighter. There are lots of different engines available, right the way from the 1.1 up until the 1.4 GTI, which is I think over 100 horsepower. Of course, you can modify them because it's a K-series engine. The cars can be bought for, I think, still under £1,000. If you're going to have a £1,500 example of the Metro, then that should be a little bit better. I mean, I would go personally for a 1.4 GS. That's really me. The sporty ones, the GTAs, the GTIs, they are, for a certain type of person. But me, it's very much about the luxury and the leather seats and things like that. So I'd go for a GS. But you can get a GS manual. Some of them are automatics, but there are GS manuals available. And most of those are sort of champagne colour, like my great uncle had a Metro 1.4 GS back in the 1990s. Parts are quite readily available for them. They're relatively easy to work on. They do have a sort of retro look about them because the Metro design dates back to the 1970s originally. So yeah, I think that's it really. Next question comes from Jerry Addison. Hello, Joseph. My question for you is, do you keep records of how much your cars actually cost over the course of a year or time of ownership, not fuel costs? This would include all finance, purchase price and service, repair items against when you sell and refinance each vehicle. I do actually keep a record of things like that, particularly with this car, with the Seat, because I actually put expenses for this car against my self-assessment tax, and I do probably about half the expenses that I use of this car against my self-assessment tax. I don't do all of it because that wouldn't be fair, but yes, so I have an idea. The MG also, I had quite sort of low cost of that. That was a very cheap car to run too, generally quite reliable, but one or two problems. The Astra was, we spent quite a lot on that. The Rover 216, that actually was pretty cheap to run. I think we got a very small amount of money back from that one, very small. But if you figuring things like tax and insurance, then no. But so yes, I do keep an eye on these things, particularly for this one. Maybe when we get rid of this car or decide what we're going to do with it eventually, then we can go into some more of the costs of how much this car actually is to run. But yes, I think it's not quite as sort of clear as if you watch something like Salvage Rebuilds UK, where they cost everything really, really carefully. I'm not quite like that, but yes, I do have an idea about that sort of thing. Now we have Jason from Laser Capri. My question, sir, is what television car would you want to own from all your videos? I have done a lot of videos on cars on television, an awful lot of them. Hard as I would struggle. Hope you find the keys. Yes, thank you, sir. We did find the keys. It's a bit of a unconventional one here. I'm going to go for the 1968 Lancia Fulvia in Department S. I've always had a thing for Lancia Fulvias ever since watching an episode of Deals on Wheels, I think it was called, with Mike Brewer and Richard Sutton in the late 1990s. And we did a feature on the Lancia Fulvia, and I just really wanted one. And, you know, Department S, it's one of the main cars they use in that series. And it's an absolutely beautiful car. Very expensive when they were new. Proper Lancias, no Fiat engineering in those. Very small engine, no 1.3 litre engine. Later, I think it was a 1.6 in some of the more powerful ones. But compared with an E-Type, which actually costs as much as a Fulvia, very economical. Not quite the same abilities maybe as that, but I really like them. So yeah, there we go. Next question from Mr. Andy G. Oh, what a nightmare. Yes, it was a nightmare, sir, but we're okay now, and the keys have turned up, and next week we'll be going to take my mother's car for an MOT and service. My question to you is roughly how long do the cars of James Bond films take to make, and does this ever cause any problems between you and your good lady wife? My good lady wife is perfectly happy for me to watch the James Bond films and with her, and know about them and talk to people about them. There's no problem with that or anything. She quite enjoys them as well. I think she likes Roger Moore because he's very smooth. The length of time it takes to make them, it's not actually that long. I've been filming tomorrow's video already today. I've already done that one, and that is another film that's not part of the James Bond series, but one of my viewers has requested it, so I've done that one. That took me start to finish. Research took me half an hour. The filming would take about 20 minutes, something like that. The editing with that's quite straightforward. That again takes about half an hour. The rendering of the video after that takes quite a while. That can be an hour and a half. The upload of that will probably be a couple of hours, something like that. So those just for time breakdown on those. The cars television like Minder took me an awfully long time, really long time, because the research is so complicated for that. My lady wife, at the moment, like a lot of people, is working from home, and so she's most of the time when I'm doing filming and things like that, she's busy with her job, so that's not really a problem most of the time. Next question from Mr. Trab Ali. I love these questions he comes up with. They are fantastic. So, you've become quite a name in the murky world of secret intelligence since you rescued the Avengers Master Tapes. The rest of you are going to have to look at the last question and answer session that we did to actually know what on earth I'm talking about. But now your recognition has gone global. In fact, the GDSE, the French MI5, has been in touch with you and given you a mission. Brigitte Bardot has been kidnapped from the Ritz in London, taken by the Italian mafia. Disaster! She's been taken, according to intelligence, to Dover on a roll-on, roll-off ferry. I don't think roll-on, roll-off ferries were around at that particular time in the 60s, but anyway, we skip over that. You, Mr. Lloyd, have to move on to Dover. You have to find the right car where Miss Bardot is being held captive in, and stop that car from getting us to Saint-Tropez from Calais, where there is a boat for the kidnappers to take them, and Brigitte to Palermo in Sicily. Question number 1. What 3 pieces of modern-day technology, gadget, weaponry would you take on this mission? I think if we're going for 2020 stuff, obviously you're going to need some kind of smartphone, and you're going to need to fill it with irrelevant apps like navigation apps and probably self-defense things like that, and appropriate music for you to go along in. So you're going to need something like that. You also probably need a taser because we're like the kind of the Avengers here, where we really carry guns. We don't carry guns, so I think I'll just get myself a taser, and I'm going to need some kind of big battery to charge this phone, because the phone's going to be pretty important on this mission. So I'll take one of those charged up power packs with me, and that should keep me going for the duration of my mission. Secondly, which period correct late 1960s French car would you choose to pursue these scoundrels across France? I'm going to have to cheat slightly here and go for a mid-1960s car. I'm going to go for a 1964 Facel Vega 2. That had a 6.7 litre Chrysler V8 engine, sort of touring car type thing. They were used in racing. The car did, with a manual gearbox, in excess of 150 miles per hour, so there's a decent chance of us catching up with the villains in a Facel Vega 2, provided it didn't break down or run out of fuel. Failing that, if we have to go late 60s, I'm going to go with the Peugeot 504 Coupe and go for as large and as powerful an engine as possible. And bear in mind, the 504 is quite a simple car, so getting that fixed in France might be quite easy. And also, the 504 Coupe is a handsome car. I'd really much like those. So, yes, let's hopefully that answered your question. Kieran Blenkinsop asks, have you had any more thoughts and ideas about what the Toledo replacement might be? And also, have you managed to find the keys? Yes, I've been to my mother's house actually today, and I've checked the keys are in the right place, so that's good. No, not really, not at the moment. My thoughts at the moment are going to be that we look at extending the finance for a couple of months if the finance company will allow us to do that. And we just keep an eye out for some deal on something that's going to be good. The car's still really good. I had it serviced and MOT'd this week. It only cost £166. Isn't a lot of money really. Fuel economy is very good. It doesn't need tyres or brakes or anything. So there's no incentive really at the moment to get rid of it because anything's going wrong, because it hasn't. We'll have to see about that. Next question from Malcolm Woodyat. I'm glad your mother found the keys. Plenty of safe places, usually hard to find afterwards. Yes, tell me about it. It was a real relief, I have to say. My question is, what do you think of using premium fuels in a non-performance car? Are there any benefits over supermarket fuels? I can actually speak from experience about this. A few years ago, this is about 10 years ago, a friend of mine, Mr. Jackson, who owns the MGZS EV that you would have seen the full review on, that was released in October, he was the head at the time of Tesco Fuel, and he challenged me, or rather I challenged myself because he wasn't paying me or anything, to see if there was any benefit in using Tesco Momentum 99 fuel over standard 95 octane supermarket petrol. I used two cars for the experiment. It was my 2004 Rover 45 1.4 Club SE I had at the time, and my former housemate's 2006 Vauxhall Corsa 1.2 twin port SXI. The cars, they pretty standard sort of cars really at the time. No modifications on them or anything else. I think the Corsa had 82 horsepower and the Rover's 103, so not a huge amount. And I purely did it as an economy challenge. I drove a very measured stretch of the M3 and M25. I would drive from Winchester to Epsom, where we used to live, every single week, because I was working with my mother at the time, but we were still living in Epsom. So I would drive pretty much at the same time of day, same route, every single week. So there are two Tesco fuel stations which are actually on that route. There's one at Winnall in Winchester and one at Leatherhead, which is the about oh gosh, it's about 5 miles from Epsom. It's not far. So I would drive a certain time of day, and usually my fuel receipts I'd find, but it'd take me the same amount of time. So it was a pretty fair test. I found absolutely no difference at all in using the Momentum 99 as opposed to the 95 octane fuel. Absolutely no difference in terms of economy whatsoever. If you're looking at an older car or a high performance one, then the extra octane in the fuel is the real benefit. I know that 98 Shell V Power is equivalent to the old 4-star petrol, and certainly on an older car like the Ford Granada Mark II that Mr. Coleman has, that really needs Shell V Power to give it the proper bang for your buck in it. He similarly uses that particular fuel in his Alpha 166. Again, these are all cars I've reviewed on my channel, and the Vauxhall Amiga V6 as well. And that does make sense for those slightly older cars with the larger engines. They're all over 2.5 litres. Now, for the Rover 45, but I have the V6 one, I did consult him about this, and it's the same really as the K series engine. The KV6 and K series engines, they're not sort of identical in any way, and they haven't got too many shared parts, but they were designed by the similar team, and they do, burn fuel in a sort of similar way. So you'd expect them to be kind of similar in terms of the oil they use, which is the case. They use the same oil. You can actually use the same oil filters on them, although the V6 one is a bit bigger. There's probably not much to be gained from that. I mean, I could do a premium fuel comparison on the 45 V6 if you wanted me to. I can do that. I'd have to find a sort of route to test that on. But yes, I mean, I did repeat the experiment a few times. I had 4 different tanks of fuel that I would use on the Corsa and the Rover. So I was doing it pretty fairly, and it was over a course of quite a while. So the cars had fuel in them most of the time, but I found no real difference in just an average type of car. Often there isn't. It needs to be something quite old or something that's got high performance to really have any benefit. Next question is from Richard Howlett. Do you drive for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than to drive your favourite roads? I don't so much anymore because I get offered cars to review or ask for cars to review. Often I can just drive those particular cars for pleasure, and certainly around here I know the roads to drive them on. If you see the review of my mother's car, it was filmed on a very deliberate circuit on the local roads in Hampshire. Mr. Richardson's review as well on Furious Driving of that car was filmed on the same type of roads. Also, where he lives, I know that there are some good roads that I filmed on. It's those are the type of times where I can sort of drive on favourite roads other than just going for a drive. And I think we're going to do a bit more of that once the lockdown things finish, because as a lot of you know, there is a Cars You Don't See Anymore Facebook group social planned, which will be combined with my channel and other YouTube channels, and that will be about driving for pleasure and going to a nice place. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll do a bit more of that, but not a huge amount of that at the moment. The final question is from Anis_NL. And he says, you're a vehicle consultant, right? Well, independent vehicle consultant, but yes, close enough. That's wicked, mate. I'm in the market for a cool whip, right? Something I can chase some fit skirts with, if you know what I mean. Yes, know what I mean. Nudge, nudge, know what I mean. Yes, of course. I want a car with some presence, something the Mandem are going to, it's probably Madams, are going to dig also. Needs to be the 4-letter word, right? I've only got a budget of 500 quid, mate. Money is tight right now. Yes, that's the case for a lot of us, I think. I'm thinking Germany, like a Mark III Polo or a Mark 1 3A. I think I mean an A3. Yeah, Mark 1 Audi A3. If I smoke the lights, get some rims, subwoofer and back box delete, it has the status. Are there any 500 quid cars that attract the ladies or mods that you recommend? That's a very, very, very interesting and very long question. He goes on to talk about cars like the VW Golf Mark IV, the Audi A6, Just loads of them. Mercedes-Benz C180, and yeah, so loads of other options there. There are two that possibly you might want to consider, and I'm not talking about this from a point of view of doing a paid job or something, because I don't normally source cars for under £500 for clients. I don't really recommend them myself. I've had so many of them, and they've had some issues. And you need somebody like me if you wanted a sub £500 car anyway, because you'd be able to check the thing over yourself in this particular instance. But anyway. The two suggestions I will make would be the Mark 1 Seat Leon. I had one of those, and I think they're very nice looking cars. They are based on the same mechanicals as the A3, the Golf, Seat Toledo of the time, the Mark 2, the Audi TT, Skoda Octavia Mark 1, and the list goes on. So parts of those are really easy to find. The interior bits can be a bit dodgy. You can get water leaks in those. The door handles here, where you pull the door, that can get a bit nasty, and they feel quite cheap. Rear wiper, I think packed up on one that I had one from 2006 to 2009. It was only the base model, the 1.4S, so not very exciting. But you could get the Cupra. I think you get the Cupra R, lots of power, same engines as Audi TT and things like that. So yes, that would be my recommendation for that category. Apart from ones you listed as well, just be aware of those. You can have things like throttle body sticking, instruments can stop working. There are a number of problems with the cars on that platform, like the Mark 4 Golf and the Audi A3 and everything like that are common to all of them, and it's worth checking those carefully. A lot of those have started rusting as well, so just be aware of that. For me though, and I know it's not a German car, but it is somewhere between sort of British and Japanese domestic market, would be the Rover 200 Coupe or the Tomcat. I did read one of those on my channel last year, belonging to Mr. Richardson, Furious Driving, and you still can get a Tomcat for under £500. I mean, you're not afraid of doing some work on the things, and they are relatively easy to work on. They're very, very, very nice looking cars in my opinion. They have good engines. I know you've got to keep the insurance down a bit, so maybe you want to go for the 1.6 Honda D series or the later 1.6K series that was in those. There was also a lot of other engines. There's a 2-litre turbo, and then the 1.8 VVC K series with 143 horsepower. The turbo is the ultimate one, of course, with 200 horsepower, but you've got to keep the spend down a bit. So maybe a Tomcat would be the sort of car that you would like. With Rover Sport body kits on them, they have a sort of presence, and they can be lowered, and you can fit wheels from the MGZS or MGF and things like that to them. The suspension's very good. A double wishbone suspension, you can tune those quite easily. So yeah, I think that would be my suggestion. Obviously go for a Mark 1 Seat Leon as well, or any of those that you've mentioned. In terms of cars to attract ladies, I wouldn't really know too much about that, other than my lady wife really likes Rovers. That's all I can say. So thank you once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Please like this video and leave a comment below. Don't forget to visit my Facebook page, facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. If you wish me to source a car for you, it can be all sorts of different cars, then please visit my website, www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk, and click on the contact tab. There'll be a link to send an email to me there. And I've also got Instagram page, instagram.com/Lloyd_vehicle_consulting. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching, and thank you for all your questions.